At the beginning of this story, we meet a young man named Talma Kamijo, who was an ordinary high school student marked by terrible luck. Despite this, he had gotten used to his bad luck and learned to live with it. But everything changed one July night in Academy City, when Talma decided to go into a local restaurant and make the mistake of ordering the house lasagna. And the funny thing is that until that moment, the poor boy had no idea what awaited him that night. While waiting for his order, Talma noticed a man threatening an innocent woman nearby. Moved by a sense of justice, he gathered up his courage and confronted the attacker, without realizing that there were other accomplices lurking. When he thought the situation was under control, the man called for reinforcements and ordered them to chase Talma throughout the city. Running for his life, he ended up reaching a bridge, where he met again the woman he had tried to protect. It was then that he discovered that his initial intervention had saved the attackers, as the woman was in fact the most powerful Esper in the city. In this story, Esper is the name given to people who have special scientifically developed abilities. In the case of that girl, she had impressive electrical powers, so if Talma hadn't intervened, the men would have been destroyed by her. Then the woman began to talk to Talma about technological coins and other scientific matters. So Talma, being a level 0 Esper, begged for mercy when he realized that she was preparing her strongest attack. She launched the blow, but was shocked to see that Talma managed to neutralize it with just one punch. Enraged, she intensified her attacks, and this time the force was so great that electricity lines were damaged, causing a blackout in half the city. The next morning, Talma woke up in his hot apartment, exhausted and sweaty. With the blackout, the food in the refrigerator had spoiled, leaving a bad smell in the air. He sighed, removed the sheets from the bed, and went to the balcony to hang them. There, he found a girl dressed in strange clothes, which resembled a church outfit. Before he could say anything, the girl woke up and asked for food. Talma, still sleepy, took her inside and offered her some of the spoiled food. To his surprise, the girl ate it all with pleasure, and even thanked him. Overcome with guilt, Talma ended up eating it too. The girl introduced herself as Index and explained that she was an index of forbidden texts, having memorized all 103,000 grimoires stored in the English church library. When Talma asked where these grimoires were, she said that they were hidden from common people like him. Index told him about her magical abilities, but Talma didn't believe her and demanded proof. She took out a knife and asked him to attack her, but Talma only ended up tearing her clothes when he held her, leaving her embarrassed. After fixing her clothes, Index said that she had to leave. Talma wanted to know more about his enemies, but she refused to talk. As he tried to follow her, Talma tripped, fell, and broke his cell phone. When he got up, he asked if she had anywhere else to go. She replied that she was seeking shelter in a nearby church and left. Talma remembered his extra classes and hurried to get ready. Academy City was a metropolis with over 2 million inhabitants, 80% of whom were students. Due to his poor performance, Talma was in detention. His teacher for extra classes, who was shorter than him, complained about his lack of effort. During class, Talma thought about Index and what she was facing. When he returned home, he met the electric Esper from the previous day, named Misaka, who challenged him to a rematch. Talma refused and conceded the victory. Furious, Misaka threw lightning bolts, which Talma ignored. When he arrived home, Talma found Index lying and injured in the entrance. He approached her and realized the severity of her injuries. Before he could do anything, a mage appeared and mocked the two. The man said that his classmate, Kanzaki, had attacked Index. Talma tried to wake her up, without success, and, overcome by rage, attacked the mage blindly. The mage, who identified himself as Style, asked Talma to get out of the way so he could take Index's body. Style explained that Index had a photogenic brain and dangerous abilities. He warned Talma about the risks she posed and said he would take her no matter what. Talma, furious, tried to hit him, but Style dodged it and summoned a magical creature called Innocentius. The creature attacked, but Talma used his unique ability to suppress it and prepared to counterattack. Style tried to launch another fireball, but Talma nullified it again. Style chanted a new spell to summon a stronger version of Innocentius. Talma struggled to dispel the enhanced monster. In the midst of this, Index awoke in an almost robotic state and began revealing important secrets to Talma. Style interrupted and launched another fireball. Talma ran through the hallways and saw strange talismans on the walls. Innocentius chased him until he reached a dead end. Talma ran past him and fell to the ground floor. The monster fired a flaming beam, which Talma managed to avoid. He tried to call the police, but realized that his phone had been destroyed in the previous fall. As Style approached Index, the sprinklers on the ceiling activated and soaked him. Talma used the elevators to reposition himself and face him again. Style was surprised. Talma explained that he had weakened Innocentius by wetting the magic papers that Style had spread around the apartment. The water had erased the ink and rendered the spells useless. With that, Talma dispelled the creature's remaining power and defeated Style with a single punch. A few hours later, the police and firefighters arrived to contain the damage. Talma took Index to a more secluded part of the city and thought about how to help her. She woke up for a moment, shared some information, and then passed out again. Talma asked about the 103,000 grimoires, but Index explained that her brain was not capable of absorbing that knowledge. He decided to take her to the house of her extra-class teacher. When he arrived, he begged to come in and put Index on the floor. Suddenly, Index's body lit up and instructed Talma to begin his healing. She asked him to leave so that his magic nullification power would not interfere with the process. Talma ran through the city streets. Kanzaki, Style's classmate, watched him from afar. Then suddenly Index's subconscious asked the teacher for help in performing the ritual. She drew a magic circle with her own blood and requested the teacher's hand and voice. The teacher hesitated, suggesting waiting for medical help, but Index insisted that conventional treatments would not do. She asked for specific items to be placed in the center of the circle, including Oreos and an SD card. The teacher followed suit. The ritual began, with Index leading the chant and the teacher following suit. The release of energy shook the room, leaving the teacher stunned, but the connection was successful. In the next step, Index asked the teacher to visualize a golden angel. The teacher tried, but failed, causing the floor to shake and sink. In a final attempt, she succeeded. Index regained control, and when she tried again, some objects began to melt. The angel appeared and remained for a longer time. The ritual ended, and Index returned to a dormant state. The next day, Talma visited the two and saw Index wearing the teacher's pajamas. He was confused and began asking questions. Index taunted the teacher and questioned her relationship with Talma. Talma said that Index was the teacher's sister and thanked her for helping to keep her safe. The teacher prepared to go to the supermarket, leaving the two at home. During her absence, Index revealed to Talma that Como, the teacher, should no longer use magic. Talma pressured Index to explain what magic means to her, which led her to reveal the burden she carried. She explains that she came from the Necessarius Church, an institution that uses good magic to fight evil. Index has the ability to memorize large amounts of information and has unintentionally memorized all 103,000 grimoires. Talma is frustrated that she has hidden her abilities. Index tries to empathize by crying, but Talma lightly slaps her forehead, trying to comfort her by reminding her that she can count on her right hand. Index reminds him about the extra classes and, despite his desire to ignore them, she insists that he go to school. And all the while, a few buildings away, Style and Kanzaki observe Talma and Index through binoculars, locating the two and planning a combat strategy against Talma, who is now protecting Index. Kanzaki suspects that Talma is using some kind of magic to nullify magical attacks. Style shows regret for hurting Index, as she seems happy with Talma and Professor Como. Despite this, they know they have a duty to fulfill. Later that night, Talma and Index go out to get some fresh air. Index excitedly talks about what Como taught her while Talma was at school. She comments that she doesn't remember her first moments in Japan very well and that she doesn't understand certain things. Noticing Talma's irritation, Index asks him what he's really feeling, and he ends up opening up. In response, Index gets angry and bites his hand before returning home. Talma continues walking alone through the streets until, suddenly, the lights go out and everyone disappears. He remains alert until Kanzaki appears. He is confused when he realizes that everyone has disappeared in just a minute. Kanzaki explains that he used a rune to evacuate the area. She reveals her true name and attacks Talma with powerful sound waves. Talma manages to dodge the attacks. Kanzaki already knew about the power of Talma's right hand, the breaker, and had prepared for this. Talma tries to counterattack courageously, but Kanzaki's blows keep him at bay. During the fight, Talma notices thin wires set up by Kanzaki, making it difficult for him to escape. Kanzaki insists that the only way for him to get out of there alive is to surrender. But even so, Talma refuses, because he believes that Index, despite carrying the Grimoire Encyclopedia, is still human. He criticizes Kanzaki's attitude and speaks firmly. Tired of his insistence, Kanzaki reveals the truth. Index was his protege and Kanzaki never wanted to hurt her. She believes that Index would be better off alone. She and Style have been trying to save her. Index's instant memorization ability overloads her brain as she absorbs both useful and useless information. Currently, more than 85% of her brain capacity is occupied by data accumulated over the last year. To avoid a total failure, Kanzaki and Style need to erase some memories and stabilize this use. The deadline to perform this memory erasure ends in 3 days. If they fail, they may lose her. Kanzaki asks Talma to hand over Index, but he refuses and accuses them of giving her up too easily. He continues arguing, irritating Kanzaki even more. Losing control, she attacks him with her sword, knocks him to the ground, and tearfully insists that there is no other choice. Even though he is injured, Talma gets up and says that they are ignoring the possibility of Index living with 100% of her mind. Kanzaki listens as Talma passionately talks about her potential to live a full life. After his speech, Talma passes out and Style takes control. Meanwhile, in Academy City, Kuroko and Misaka return from the market and notice a crowd near a platform that had crashed into a bridge. Curious, Kuroko goes to investigate, leaving Misaka behind. Misaka looks around and sees Index dressed in religious attire walking away, but since she doesn't know her well yet, she doesn't pay any attention. 3 days after the attack, Talma wakes up in Komo's apartment and sees Index by his side. He is surprised to learn that he had been unconscious for 3 days. He recalls Kanzaki's words, wondering if there was any truth to them. Index tells him that Como found him lying in the middle of the street and took him home. She apologizes for not being able to help him and offers to heal him with magic, but Talma declines, saying that he will be fine. This angers her, but she respects his decision. Later, Index gets up to make breakfast, which Talma tries to avoid eating. Even so, she throws the food at his head. Just then, someone knocks on the door. When they open it, Kanzaki and Style are waiting. Index stands in front of Talma, begging them to leave her friend alone. Style and Kanzaki hear the plea and leave. That night, Talma sits next to the sleeping Index and remembers the encounter with the magicians. He realizes that the memory erasure procedure is scheduled to take place in a few hours, but Index is still at Komo's house. As he watches her sleep, Kanzaki calls Talma, and he answers. She asks if Index is with him, and Talma confirms. Kanzaki tells him that he should say goodbye, as they will soon come for her to perform the ritual at midnight. Talma asks if there is another way to do it, but Kanzaki replies that this is the only method they know. Talma proposes to use science to find another solution, but Kanzaki insists that handing over Index is the only way to complete the mission. Talma refuses and states that he will fight until he drops. Then Kanzaki challenges Talma to do his best, as he has until midnight to hand over Index or face the consequences. She ends the call, leaving Talma with a sense of urgency. He tries to find books on psychotropic drugs that can erase memories, but finds nothing. He also tries to contact the intelligent students, but they are all asleep, since it is a school night. Feeling hopeless, Talma believes that all is lost until one of the students returns his call. However, upon realizing that it is already midnight, he gives up and prepares for the confrontation. Style and Kanzaki quickly arrive. Index is already suffering from the overload of memories. They pull Talma away and assess the situation. Talma begs for a chance to find an alternative that does not erase all of Index's memories. Style grows tired of the pleas and asks if Talma can live with the risk of putting her life in danger with his uncertain methods. At a loss for words, Talma finds himself with no way out, not wanting to lose his friend. Style begins to draw the magic circle on the wall. When he finishes, he informs Talma that the ritual will begin in 10 minutes. Kanzaki talks to Style and allows Talma more time to say goodbye to Index. After the two leave the room, Index wakes up and asks Talma to escape while he can. Talma puts her back to sleep and begins to ponder. He realizes something strange. How did Kanzaki and Style know the exact percentage of Index's brain capacity? He quickly calls his teacher, Como, for answers. Como says that it is physically impossible for the human brain to explode from too much information. The revelation shocks Talma. Even so, Como reinforces that the human brain cannot be overloaded in this way. Talma concludes that someone is lying, either the church or Kanzaki and Style. He strongly suspects the church. With time running out, Talma places his right hand on Index's forehead, trying to nullify any magical spell the church may have placed on her. On his first attempt, nothing happens, so he digs deeper and places his finger inside Index's mouth, encountering a strange and dark magical energy. This energy shocks him and transforms Index into a robotic state. Index's subconscious begins to see Talma as a threat and goes into action, conjuring defensive weapons in the form of lasers. The subconscious robot fires magical lasers at Talma, but he absorbs them with his right hand. Style and Kanzaki are stunned to see Index using elemental powers. Even though she is not an Esper, Talma reveals the truth to the two, explaining that the church lied to them and manipulated them to prevent them from knowing too much about the grimoires stored in Index's photographic mind. Index's robot intensifies its attack to eliminate Talma and protect the church's secrets. However, Talma concentrates even more power in his right hand and continues to absorb the attacks. Style intervenes using his magic to stop the confrontation. Talma challenges them and asks if they really want to save Index's life. He encourages them to join him in stopping the attack and become protagonists of their own story, instead of remaining as secondary characters. Kanzaki enters the fight and uses a powerful spell to undo Index's magic attacks. The spell not only stops the attack, but also redirects the laser beam through the ceiling towards the sky. Index's robot hesitates for a moment, but soon resumes the attack. Style summons Innocentius to protect Talma, but Index's robot increases its power and destroys the creature. Seizing the opportunity, Talma approaches Index's body, places his right hand on her forehead, and absorbs the source of the magic spell until there is no more energy left to sustain the attack. Index stops attacking and faints as white feathers fall from the ceiling. Talma holds her in his arms for a brief moment before collapsing as well, exhausted. The next day, Index visits Talma in the hospital. The doctor asks if the two were involved in the destruction of the satellite that occurred the night before. Index claims that she does not know what happened. The doctor gives her a letter written by Style and Kanzaki addressed to Talma. Index opens the letter and discovers that she has been temporarily placed in Talma's care, while the church deals with the consequences of their lies. Suddenly, the letter explodes. The doctor instructs Index to visit Talma and thank him for helping her. Index then goes to a nearby clinic and knocks on the door, but Talma greets her and pretends not to remember who she is. Despite the joke, Talma reveals that he actually remembers everything, including the church's lies. Index tries to help him recover his memories, but finds that her efforts are ineffective. When she is close to tears, Talma stops joking and assures her that he remembers everything. He explains that he used his power to nullify the effects of the memory loss on his own brain. Although Index doesn't believe him right away, she is irritated that he lied in the beginning. When the doctor enters the room, he finds Index rushing out. He asks Talma if he still has a heart, even after losing his memories. Talma replies that he is fine. 2 weeks later, Style visits an underground laboratory and encounters an upside-down humanoid machine called the Grand Overseer, Elister. Elister orders Style to form a temporary partnership with Talma to maintain balance in the world, and together they find a person named Deep Blood. This person has unique powers that can eliminate an organism that is dangerous to global peace. The next day, Index accompanies Talma to the bookstore to buy reference books. As they leave the store, Talma complains about the price of the book. Index asks what they can do with the 3,000 yen left in the bank, while Talma thinks about what to do with the money. Index is distracted by a plate of ice cream. When he approaches, she jokes about his craving for ice cream. Out of frustration, Index starts talking so fast that Talma gets lost in his own thoughts, wondering what would have happened if the incident 2 weeks ago hadn't caused his memory loss. Index calls him back to reality and begs him to buy her ice cream. Just then, 2 of Talma's friends show up, as usual, to tease him. They ask who the strange girl with him is. Upon seeing his friends, Talma becomes embarrassed and tries to push them away. Index realizes this and uses her last card to convince him to buy the ice cream. Talma eventually gives in. The next scene shows Talma using his money to buy a full dinner for Index and her 2 friends. As he approaches the table with his tray, Talma sees a brown-haired woman sleeping next to Index. He tries to wake her, but she resists. After some effort, the woman wakes up and asks for help finding a 100 yen coin that she lost after making too many requests. Talma refuses to give her his own money. The woman, whom they call the Shrine Girl, asks Index and Talma's friends for money, but none of them are willing to help a stranger. They continue to call her the Shrine Girl, but she claims to be a magician. Index tries to get to know her better, but the woman annoys her. The woman's bodyguards arrive at the restaurant to pick her up. When Talma asks who they are, the girl replies that they are teachers from the preparatory course. After she leaves, Talma and Index head home. On the way, they find an abandoned cat. and Index falls in love with the animal. Wanting to take it home, she begs Talma to let her keep the cat, which she names Sphinx. Talma replies that animals are not allowed in the dormitories. Index screams in frustration, scaring the cat, which runs away. Talma is left alone on the street while Index chases after the animal. After she leaves, Style appears on the scene and activates a rune, which manifests itself to Talma. Frightened, Talma asks what he did to Index. Style assures him that Index is fine and that she was just following the cat. He explains that now there is another problem. Style tells him that a girl named Deep Blood is being held captive at Missalacrum School. This once renowned school has become a fake religious cult that idolizes science. He goes on to tell her that Aureolus Izzard, a real alchemist from Zurich, has been hiding the girl there for 3 years. Talma asks why this girl is so important. Style explains that she is the only one capable of eliminating vampires. Talma considers declining the invitation to help with the investigation, but Style argues that he shouldn't refuse. Style ends the conversation, undoes the rune, and leaves. Index and Talma return to the dormitory at the same time. At the door, Talma notices something moving inside Index's clothes. He demands that she show him what she is hiding. Index strongly resists. After some insistence, Talma discovers that she has brought the cat home in secret. Index begs to keep it, while Talma tries to get rid of the animal. In the end, Talma agrees, on the condition that the cat remains inside the house at all times. Index thanks Talma for his generosity. As Talma leaves the dormitory, he sees Style scattering talismans around the area. When questioned, Style explains that he is positioning Innocentius around the structure to protect Index while they are away. When he's done, Style takes Talma to the prep school and shows him a picture of the girl they're supposed to protect. Looking at the picture, Talma realizes that it's Himegami, the girl he saw at the restaurant earlier that day. The duo enters the school and finds 2 bodies lying on the floor. Once inside, they realize that the students are under the influence of a powerful magical spell. Style informs them that the spell is being sustained by a hidden core somewhere in the building, and that destroying it is the only way to free the students. They then decide to go upstairs, and Talma questions why they didn't use the elevator. Style explains that electronic devices may not be allowed in enemy territory. To test this hypothesis, Talma takes his cell phone out of his pocket and calls Index, talking to her briefly before ending the call. After the call, Style shows some jealousy when he realizes that Talma and Index are closer than before. When they arrive at the cafeteria, they find students apparently engaged in casual conversation and joking around. However, as soon as the students notice Style and Talma's presence, everything suddenly stops. The students start staring at them and start chanting incantations, making their hostility clear. Style realizes the imminent danger and runs away, leaving Talma confused. Soon, Talma notices small magical spheres forming on the students' heads and heading towards him. In an attempt to save himself, Style pushes Talma into the path of the spheres, sacrificing him as a distraction while he escapes. Talma falls down a flight of stairs and comes face to face with a student who is reciting incantations. The spheres attack the student until she loses consciousness. However, the spheres continue to advance towards Talma until they are dispersed by Himegami, the very student they were looking for. Meanwhile, Izzard has lured Style to another part of the school, planning to corner him. He sends some students to attack him, but Style fights back and manages to defeat them. Just then, Izzard appears, ready to face Style. Meanwhile, Index takes a shower at Talma's apartment, reflecting on the recent phone call. She finds it strange that Talma responded calmly, considering his usual reactions. After showering, she gets dressed and heads out to find him. At the same time, Himegami pulls out a police baton hidden in her clothes with the intention of performing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on the unconscious student. Talma intervenes and asks Himegami to leave the building, since she is free to leave. Himegami explains that she has a mission to fulfill within the school. Since her blood attracts vampires, she spent a long time exterminating them, but she has grown tired of this life and wants to end it. Talma asks her why she is helping Izzard if she no longer wants to kill vampires. Himegami replies that she is helping Izzard capture a vampire sample, and that he promised to keep her out of combat. At that moment, Izzard appears. Talma instinctively attacks him, but Izzard forces him to stop. As tensions rise, Himegami steps in and stops the violence. Izzard then uses his power to make Talma forget everything he has learned and moves on. Meanwhile, Index tracks Talma's energy to the school building. Talma wakes up on a swing set, furious at Style for using him as bait. At that moment, Izzard finds Index at the entrance of the building and puts her into a deep sleep. Style and Talma run back to the school, but but are intercepted by the remaining members of the 13 Holy Knights. The Knights use the spell Holy Magic Bombardment, an incantation that amplifies Izzard's true power, called Ars Magna. With the spell completed, Style and Talma find Sphinx outside the building, indicating that Index has been there and has probably been captured. Style and Talma rush into the school in search of Izzard. Meanwhile, Izzard has already taken Index to a room on the upper floor. They find Izzard in the middle of preparing a ritual, with Himegami by his side. Style realizes that Izzard's intention is to repeat the memory erasing ritual on Index. Apparently, Izzard is unaware that Talma had already proven the theory about Index's memory limit to be false. Style explains to Talma that Izzard had been Index's partner 3 years ago, but her memories were erased. Izzard believes that vampires have unlimited brain capacity, which allows them to remember everything for long periods of time and use their brains without restrictions. Now, Izzard intends to lure a vampire using Himegami's blood. He wants to capture her and turn Index into a vampire so that she will never have to go through the erasure ritual again. Style informs him that this plan is no longer necessary. In addition to being risky, Talma has already made it clear that Index, being human, would not die for knowing too much. Izzard refuses to believe Talma's theory, considering him just a human without powers. Style warns him that he should listen to Talma, or he will be solely responsible for the consequences. Style also reveals Talma's hidden power, the imaginary breaker, which resides in his right arm and cancels out any magic. Soon Izzard despairs and sits down. At that moment, Index awakens and asks Talma for food, saying that she is hungry. Izzard ridicules them for mocking him and orders them to throw themselves on the ground. Style and Talma obey and fall. Izzard then demands that they leave forever. Himegami interferes and manages to distract him long enough to break the spell. Izzard then turns his attention to Himegami and orders her to disappear. Talma quickly gets up and holds Himegami to prevent her from getting hurt. Himegami's life flashes before her eyes in the face of the imminent threat. She remembers the first time she saw Izzard and the calm expression he displayed. Even though he knew that she attracted vampires, Talma uses his imaginary breaker to cancel Izzard's effect on Himegami. With her saved, Talma carefully lays her down and faces Izzard. Izzard takes out another magic pin and forces Talma to suffocate, be crushed, and struck by lightning. Even so, Talma uses his right hand to cancel all the effects. Realizing that his attacks have no effect, Izzard decides to intensify his offensive. He conjures several firearms and fires them all at the same time. Talma is hit by several projectiles, but miraculously survives. Style, still lying on the ground, begins to question Izzard's supposed omnipotence, instilling doubts in his mind. Izzard, furious, tears Style apart and returns to face Talma. Meanwhile, Talma reflects on Style's words and begins to wonder why Izzard needs so many instruments when he could simply turn his orders into reality with words. This leads him to conclude that Izzard's commands are illusions that only affect their victims as long as he believes in them. They only need to make Izzard doubt himself. He attacks with all his might, striking Talma's right hand squarely and ripping it off. Even though he is badly injured, Talma gets up, with his right arm mangled. He walks silently towards Izzard. Each firm step resounds like a blow. His mere presence is enough to make Izzard tremble. Without saying a word, Talma approaches and finishes him off once and for all. The next day, Talma is hospitalized again to repair his right hand. The doctor is shocked to see him hospitalized for the second time in 10 days. Later, Style visits Talma and cuts an apple for him. He informs him that Izzard has lost his memory and the ability to use magic because of the battle. The association decides to close the preparatory school and free the students from the spell. As they discuss the events, Index arrives accompanied by Himegami to check on Talma. Upon entering the room, Himegami asks why Talma helped her. Talma replies that he had no specific reason. He just felt he had to do it. Himegami watches him silently, pondering the true motives behind his actions. Elsewhere in Academy City, a woman resembling Misaka, the school's level 5 aspire, is seen aiming a sniper rifle at a man she calls Accelerator. She takes aim and shoots at him, but he easily deflects the bullets, causing them to hit her. She ends up injured and unable to escape. The next day, Talma attends a remedial class and decides to buy a drink from a faulty vending machine. To his dismay, the machine swallows his money and fails to deliver the drink. His bad luck strikes again. As he laments the situation, Misaka appears in dramatic fashion. She kicks the machine and manages to get a drink for herself. Talma laments the lost money, and Misaka, with her sarcastically kind manner, offers to help. She discharges an electric shock into into the machine, causing several drinks to be dispensed for both of them. Misaka collects all the cans and gives them to Talma, who is sitting on a bench outside. They talk about the time Talma defeated Misaka on the bridge. However, Talma has trouble remembering that moment, as he lost part of his memories during the fight with Index. Determined to hide his memory loss, he pretends to remember the event, and Misaka believes him. Suddenly, Kuroko appears and teasingly calls Talma Misaka's boyfriend, which causes Misaka to try to electrocute her. Kuroko evades the attacks and runs away. Soon after, Misaka's doppelganger appears, and Misaka introduces her as her sister before leaving with her. On his way home, Talma bumps into a tennis ball and falls to the ground. When he gets up, he comes face to face with Misaka's sister carrying military equipment. Intrigued, he asks her about it. Misaka's sister reveals that she used to work in research and offers to help him carry the juice cans. The two go together to Talma's dorm, where they meet Meika, a student at the maid school. She explains that she will be staying in the room for a while, since the air conditioning in her dorm broke. After a quick conversation, Meika teases Talma about Misaka's sister being in the room and leaves shortly after. Riding her robotic toy, Talma and Misaka's sister ride the elevator up to Talma's floor, where they meet Index, Himegami, and Sphinx. The group explains that they are there to rid Sphinx of fleas. Talma criticizes the methods they were using, but Misaka's sister uses her electrical powers to exterminate the fleas and then leaves, leaving the juice cans behind. The next day, Talma falls asleep again during his makeup class. Professor Como tries unsuccessfully to keep the students' attention. After class, Talma finds the real Misaka near a fence. They talk about the advertising blimps that fly over the city. Misaka lightly touches Talma's forehead and says goodbye. Walking away, Talma continues on to his dorm, where he meets Misaka's sister again. He thanks her for helping him with the drinks and asks about the mysterious black cat she seems to be involved with. Misaka's sister explains that she is trying to rescue the cat from being taken to the city shelter. Talma offers to help and carries the cat with her to her sister's dorm. During the walk, she has trouble choosing a name for the cat. Arriving at a bookstore, Talma hands the cat over to her and enters the store to look for books. At that moment, Misaka's sister notices Accelerator nearby and prepares for a possible confrontation. She ends up cornered in an alley with Accelerator. She tries to shoot him with her Smekber rifle, but he easily deflects the bullets and bounces them back at her. Wounded, she lies on the ground as Accelerator approaches and touches her wounds. Meanwhile, Talma finishes buying his book and returns to the street, only to notice that Misaka's sister has disappeared. He picks up the cat and begins searching for her. Heading into the alley, Talma finds bullet casings scattered on the ground. Investigating further, he finds a seemingly lifeless body. Frightened, Talma calls an ambulance and the police. When the officers arrive, Talma takes them to the scene, but the body has disappeared. He insists that he saw someone dead, but the officers don't believe him. Determined to find out what happened, Talma runs to another alley. After some time, he finds Misaka's sister alive. Unable to understand how she survived, he stares at her in surprise. She apologizes for having worried him and shares a seemingly random password related to an experiment. Talma tries to understand what she is saying, but soon several more copies of Misaka's sisters appear, all apologizing for causing trouble. Talma is shocked to hear them reveal the serial number of the deceased Misaka. Intrigued, Talma asks for more information about who they are. The clones explain that they were created from Misaka for military purposes. After the explanation, they say goodbye and leave Talma with the black cat, completely speechless. He wonders if Misaka knew about the military cloning program. Thinking about their conversation earlier, he concludes that she probably did. In Himegami's dorm, she and Como sit down to dinner. Just as they are about to eat, someone knocks on the door. Himegami opens it and finds Index lying on the floor. She immediately closes the door, refusing to let her in. After many requests and seeing that Index uses Sphinx to awaken empathy, Himegami lets her in. Index joins them for dinner. Meanwhile, Talma goes to Misaka's apartment building to ask about the clones. He calls the room, and when they answer, he immediately recognizes the robotic voice. It could be Kuroko or one of the clones. The person informs him that Misaka is not at the moment, but suggests that he wait for her in the room. Talma enters and finds his roommate asleep. Half asleep, she invites him to sit on Misaka's bed while she waits. Talma refuses, finding the situation inappropriate. His roommate insists that it's okay and, curious, asks who he is. Before he can answer, the voice of the dorm supervisor echoes through the speakers announcing an attendance check. Kuroko quickly hides Talma under the bed to avoid confusion. The supervisor enters, gives her instructions, and asks Kuroko to meet Misaka at the cafeteria. As soon as she leaves, Kuroko also leaves the room and Talma remains there. Hiding hiding under the bed, overcome with curiosity. Talma searches the room and finds a bag with the zipper open. Upon opening the bag, he discovers documents related to the cloning program. It is clear that Misaka not only knew about the program, but also actively supported it. Shocked, Talma runs outside and notices the wind turbines spinning even though there is no wind. This indicates that Misaka is nearby. A short distance away, Misaka stands still, staring at the spinning turbines. During dinner, Komo talks to Index and Himegami about Schrodinger's life as a scientist, using a box of chocolates as an analogy. She tries to explain the idea of replacing reality with a mental image of one's desires. Meanwhile, Misaka remains near the fence, deep in thought. She remembers the time when she was approached by scientists when she was still young and invited to participate in an experiment. Surprisingly, her mother did not object to the idea of using her daughter for scientific purposes. The fame of her classification as a level 5 aspire reached her schoolmates, causing her to avoid the spotlight for much of her childhood. Talma approaches her and asks what she is doing. Misaka replies that she can do whatever she wants and that she does not need to follow orders from a level 0 aspire like him. Talma, serious for the first time, presents one of the documents and reads its contents. Misaka is shocked and wonders how he managed to access it. Despite being surprised, she maintains her composure and asks why Talma entered her room without permission. Talma apologizes and asks how she obtained those documents. Misaka remains calm and reveals that she has been secretly working to dismantle illegal research facilities scattered throughout the city. Despite the constant surveillance of her mother's satellite, she has managed to avoid detection and eliminate these research centers. She explains that these facilities were looking for a way to make Accelerator reach level 6 aspire, something that has never been done before. Talma suggests that she could have asked for help instead of resorting to creating clones. However, Misaka states that her confrontation with Accelerator can only occur 125 times before it becomes lethal. If she dies in reality, Accelerator would lose the motivation to reach level 6, and her other 10,000 clones would be spared from death. Misaka feels motivated to search for Accelerator and stands up to begin her search. Talma stands in her way, determined to protect her. Misaka becomes angry and tries to forcefully push him away. She releases her electrical powers and prepares to attack him. However, Talma stands firm, showing no fear in the face of her power. This surprises Misaka, who warns him to take her seriously. Talma insists that he will not fight her and encourages her to do her best. Misaka fires her first lightning bolt, purposely missing. She then launches another lightning bolt, hitting Talma and causing him to faint on the ground. Unbeknownst to Misaka, Talma has already absorbed the shock and quickly gets up to face her. Misaka watches, confused, not understanding why her greatest rival refuses to fight. Talma explains that he won't hurt her because of everything she's faced. However, instead of taking comfort from his words, Misaka grows increasingly frustrated and tells Talma to stop thinking she's a good person. She tries to launch more lightning bolts, but Talma absorbs them all. Misaka questions why he's defending someone who considers herself a villain. Talma firmly states that he doesn't see her as such. He believes in their friendship and begs her not to put herself in danger. Misaka gathers even more energy and issues a final warning. Talma stands firm, refusing to let her pass. Overcome with emotion, Misaka releases all of her electricity, enveloping the entire bridge. When her energy runs out, she collects the black cat and checks on Talma. He tries to get up, but his body is too weak. Slumped on the ground, Talma thinks of a way to stop the scientists' experiment without alerting them or putting Misaka at risk. One of Misaka's clones arrives at the city's port. Prepared to face Accelerator, she utters code words that activate the combat environment and waits for her opponent. Komo takes Himegami and Index to a sauna to relax and relieve stress. During a light massage, Komo shares information about Talma and his powers. When Himegami asks about Talma's true abilities, Komo explains that his status as a level 0 aspire reveals that there is a part of the city's classification system that has yet to be understood. Talma is an anomaly, like a castaway that no one has made the effort to study. Meanwhile, Talma wakes up in Misaka's arms. She seems dissatisfied and asks why he didn't fight her. Talma smiles and says that he was busy thinking about how to end the experiment, and that he finally came up with a plan. When Misaka asks what it is, Talma explains that he needs to make the scientists lose faith in Accelerator's power. He intends to challenge him to a duel and defeat him, proving that even a level 0 aspire like him can defeat a level 5. Misaka is shocked and tries to convince him not to take the risk. Talma ignores her concerns, stands up, and asks her to reveal where Accelerator is. Meanwhile, Accelerator arrives at the port to face one of Misaka's clones. They exchange a few words before the fight. The clone loses her patience and demands that Accelerator start right away. He stops talking and charges at her. Talma runs desperately to the port, hoping to catch up with Accelerator before the battle with the clone begins. Misaka watches everything from the bridge, surprised by Talma's boldness. She looks at the black cat in her arms and decides to follow him. Talma reaches the port and jumps over the fence. He notices sparks of lightning in the air and deduces that the fight has already started. Accelerator takes the advantage early in the battle. Misaka's clone, on the other hand, remains motionless, waiting for the wind to pick up to generate static electricity. When this doesn't happen, she changes strategy. She tries to convert the surrounding oxygen into ozone, hoping to suffocate her opponent, but Accelerator notices the maneuver. He advances without hesitation and hits her hard. With the ability to manipulate vectors such as momentum, force, and other principles of physics, Accelerator seems invincible. His only vulnerability, Talma's right hand. Just as Accelerator is about to defeat the clone, Talma arrives on the scene. Without hesitation, he demands that he leave her alone. Accelerator smirks and offers Talma the chance to leave. But Talma stands firm and steps forward. The clone watches, confused, wondering why anyone would risk so much for someone like her. Talma doesn't respond, he just stares at his enemy with a determined gaze. He says a few words and then throws a punch straight at Accelerator. In response, Accelerator kicks the ground hard, releasing a blast of compressed air that knocks Talma back. He then manipulates the tracks of a forklift into weapons, launching them toward him. Talma narrowly dodges the blow and prepares to counterattack. Accelerator approaches and touches Talma, but he uses his right hand to nullify the enemy's ability. This angers Accelerator, who wonders what happened. Frustrated, he kicks a shipping container, scattering flammable dust. It causes a huge explosion. Talma barely survives the attack, retreating in time. Accelerator vows to make Talma pay for provoking him. He charges forward, but Talma responds with a powerful punch to the face. Accelerator becomes even more enraged, and the two engage in intense combat. Talma remains calm and continues to land blows to his enemy's face. During the fight, he realizes that Accelerator's weakness is hand-to-hand combat, as the powerful Aspayer does not know how to defend himself well in street fights. With this in mind, Talma intensifies his attacks and dominates his opponent. Even after being thrown several times, Accelerator gets up. He mumbles incoherent words, as if he were on the verge of collapse, and then forms a sphere of plasma over his head. The beam grows rapidly, pulsating with unstable energy. He aims at Talma. He manages to dodge it, already anticipating the next move, just as Accelerator is about to fire again. Misaka appears and shouts for him to stop. Talma, surprised, asks her not to interfere, but Misaka only whispers an apology and prepares her coin to launch the iconic Fleming shot. Talma shouts for them to stop, but the plasma ball continues to expand. Misaka understands how the beam works and comes up with a plan. She decides to use her clones to manipulate the wind speed around the city's turbines. By directing electrical energy into the turbines and accelerating their rotation, they are able to control the wind and prevent Accelerator from compressing it. The plan works and interferes with the air pressure, destabilizing the plasma. This forces Accelerator to stop the formation of the energy ball. Furious at the interference, he becomes even more determined to defeat Misaka and Talma. Talma recovers and challenges Accelerator to continue fighting. He charges at Talma with all his strength, but Talma dodges and lands a devastating blow. Accelerator loses his vision and collapses, defeated by the impact. Talma also faints shortly after, exhausted. He wakes up and realizes that he is touching the chest of one of Misaka's clones. Embarrassed, he thinks he did it by accident, but the clone admits that she placed his hand there. Talma despairs when he realizes that the anesthesia has prevented him from feeling anything. Misaka informs him that the plan worked and that research on Accelerator has been suspended. However, she and her clones can still be sent to a facility for research on cell segmentation and the creation of new species. Talma asks if he will see her again, and she says yes before going on her way. The next morning, the doctor checks on Talma, confirms that he is fine, and leaves. Later, Misaka visits him to thank him and gives him a box of expensive chocolates. Talma appreciates the gesture and mentions his encounter with the clone that morning. Misaka teases him before saying goodbye. Talma reminds her that she should be proud of having given life to so many people through her DNA. Misaka bears the blame for the deaths of most of her sisters, but Talma consoles her, saying that they would probably thank her for bringing them into existence. A few hours later, Index visits Talma and, in a playful gesture of concern, gets on top of him and bites his head. Meanwhile, Misaka and her clones return to their routines and begin to live their days in peace. A few weeks after the intense battle with Accelerator, Talma is forced to go on a vacation in the countryside with Index. Their teacher, Como, sends them away in order to calm things down after their recent confrontations. Talma tries to refuse, but Como insists, stating that he has no choice. To make matters worse, Index, who does not have legal citizenship, manages to convince him to take her along. Talma forges an ID for Index, allowing her to leave Academy City. Talma ends up stuck at a seaside resort with Index, who frequently gets him into difficult situations. During their downtime, Index gives Talma a poisonous jellyfish as a gift, which stings him. He treats his wounds in his room, and a resort attendant informs him that visitors will be arriving the next day. Talma spends the day reflecting on his parents and cousins, whom he has not seen in a long time, unsure of how they may have changed. That night, while in the sauna, Index asks Talma to talk about his parents. Talma suggests that they wait until they see them the next day, which makes Index react with a tantrum. After bathing, the two return to their room and watch a television program before going to sleep. The next morning, Talma wakes up to a phone call. The attendant informs him that his parents have already arrived. Talma sees Index still sleeping and goes out to find his father. When he sees him, his father runs over and greets him enthusiastically. Talma is surprised and offers to carry the suitcase, but his father asks him to wait for his mother and cousin, who will be arriving soon. Soon after, his cousin, now more grown up and developed, arrives and jumps into his arms. Talma tries to push her away, and at that moment his mother appears. Talma does not recognize her, as she looks only 15 years old. Thinking that she is another cousin, he says something disrespectful. He only realizes his mistake when his father reprimands him for having spoken to his own mother like that. Faced with the reality that his mother looks like a teenager, Talma is stunned and starts laughing uncontrollably. Frustrated, he runs back to his room, ignoring his father's attempts to make him come back. Upon returning to the resort, Talma discovers that the attendant has been replaced by someone who looks like one of Misaka's clones. It seems that someone is altering the people around him. To make matters even stranger, the second attendant, who was previously an elderly man, now looks like Style, the magician. Talma is even more frightened when he sees Index coming down the stairs, but now she looks like a teenage boy. In the next scene, Talma wakes up on the beach. After having been tied up several times by his own family, he still believes that he is trapped in a dream and that he will soon wake up. However, his father arrives and claims that it is real. Shortly after, his mother appears wearing a provocative swimsuit, barely covering her body. Finally, Index, still looking like a boy, appears and begins to chase Talma. Talma returns to the resort and finds the attendants watching a news report about the White House and the United States. Curious, he watches and is surprised to see Como reporting from there, with Misaka acting as the president. Strange and embarrassing situations continue to occur, leaving Talma increasingly confused. When he can't take it anymore, he decides to go out for some fresh air. As he climbs a staircase to a resting place, Talma finds a girl wearing peculiar clothes and chained up. The girl mistakes him for the caster of the spell and attacks him. Luckily, Kanzaki and his classmate Tsuchimikado, who is actually a member of the church, intervene and stop her from hurting him. Talma is surprised to see the two at the resort and quickly asks for an explanation. Kanzaki reveals that he is trapped in a world similar to an illusion, something close to a genjutsu, as in Naruto's stories. She explains that the person responsible for this spell is still hidden, waiting for the right moment to complete the magic and completely transform reality around him. The chained girl, named Misha, apologizes for her actions and reveals that she is a purist of the Russian church. After the introductions, Kanzaki and the others explain the existence of the Tree of Sephiroth, which ranks angels in heaven. They suspect that a powerful mage, perhaps a fallen angel, is behind the distortion in the world they find themselves in. They initially suspect Talma, but when they realize that he does not understand the situation at all, they start to consider another suspect. Suddenly, Misha summons a water monster to attack Talma. He defends himself with his imaginary nullification power, confirming Misha's suspicion that he is indeed a level 0 Aspire. Talma turns to Tsuchimikado and asks about his vast knowledge of the church and magic. Tsuchimikado reveals that he has always been a member of the church, although Talma did not know this. That night, Talma reflects on their encounter and remembers Tsuchimikado revealing his identity as an agent of the church tasked with spying on him. Kanzaki also suggests that the caster of the spell may be someone close to Talma. When asked if his parents look the same as before, Talma is left speechless. Tsuchimikado joins him on the balcony and explains that his idol act is just a front for the investigation. Talma questions why Tsuchimikado practices magic as an esper. His friend reveals that Kanzaki is actually a princess destined to lead the clan of her followers. He also tells him that Style's consciousness resides within Kanzaki, which causes her to sometimes resemble him. As they talk, Kanzaki barges into the room, tired of the inappropriate touching. She asks Talma to accompany her to the bathhouse to wash up. At the bathhouse, Talma reveals that he already knows Kanzaki's true identity. She is unfazed and asks him to watch the men's section while she bathes, as she does not feel comfortable in the women's section. Talma takes over. Shortly after Kanzaki finishes bathing, Talma's father enters and pulls his son inside, telling him that they should both bathe like men. Talma tries to warn him about the risk, but his father enters anyway. Inside, they find Kanzaki naked and leave in a hurry. Father and son stop in the garden to rest after their escape. Talma's father asks for information about Kanzaki, and Talma explains before questioning whether the person he is talking to is really his father or an imposter. Noticing the change in tone, his father asks why, and Talma replies that everything is fine. They talk for a while and then spot Misha alone in the garden. Talma's father leaves him alone with Misha and returns to the countryside. Talma tries to talk to the Russian girl, but she remains silent. He offers her some gum, which she accepts. He then asks about the Angel Fall spell, trying to understand why she suspected him. Misha shares his observations and stresses the urgency of finding the caster before the spell is completed, as it could put the world at risk. Upon returning to the resort, Talma hears his parents about to have sex in the room above. Worried, he rushes to stop them. The next day, Index in fox form walks down the hallway, worried about Talma's absence the day before. Talma's mother comes out of the room, preparing to leave. When asked where she is going, she replies that she is going back to their house to lock the door. Misha offers to accompany her, and the two leave the resort. Talma and his father argue again before the scene fades to black. The father reveals that Misha refused to touch Talma's right hand in the garden. Talma meets with his companions in the garden to discuss the Angel Fall spell. He shares the information he learned from Misha the night before and asks why she couldn't touch his hand. The group concludes that Misha must be the caster of the spell and that she has no intention of canceling it. They need to get to Talma's parents' house urgently. Talma takes a map from his father and heads off in a taxi to their destination. Cherit says, upon arriving at his parents' house, Talma and the others find the place completely empty. Talma enters and finds peculiar mementos in his father's collection. While exploring, he comes across an old drawing he made when he was a child and continues to examine the place. He then finds a photograph of his father and notices that he looks exactly the same as before, which raises the suspicion that his father may be the one behind the spell. Just then, Misha and Talma's mother arrive. Upon seeing them, Misha runs away and Talma runs after her, questioning why his father would cast such a strange spell. He accidentally encounters Hemgami, disguised as a bus driver but unaware of her identity. Talma quickly asks for a ride, and Hemgami takes him in his truck. That same night, Talma urgently returns to the resort and finds Kanzaki. He asks about his father and tells him everything he has learned. Kanzaki prepares to deal with Talma's father, but Talma decides to confront him in person. He goes to the beach and finds his father staring into the distance. There, Talma questions his father's involvement with the occult. His father explains that when Talma was little, he was considered an unlucky child because of the constant bad situations around him. In an attempt to change his son's fate, he turned to the occult. Since science had not yielded results, Talma expresses dissatisfaction with his father's decision, saying that he accepted his bad luck and that his father should not have interfered. His father seems surprised and admits that collecting occult souvenirs would never bring Talma luck. Talma then asks if he knows anything about the false angel spell, but his father claims he doesn't know anything. Talma asks about his mother's whereabouts, and his father replies that Talma was the last person to see her. At that moment, Misha arrives at the beach with them. Talma demands to know his true identity, but Misha draws his weapon and prepares to attack Talma and his father. Kanzaki arrives in time and stops Misha from taking lives without the creator's permission. Kanzaki explains that the one before them is not the real Misha, but an imposter from from the Creator's church. Misha turns day into night, reveals her wings, and raises her mace like an angel. She summons a magical dome called Sweep. Talma prepares to use his right hand to nullify the fallen angel's magic, but Kanzaki warns him that this power does not work against angels. Suddenly, intense music begins to play, signaling the beginning of a serious battle. Talma grabs his father's hand and runs away, leaving Kanzaki in charge of facing the fallen angel. Upon arriving home, Talma finds his mother unconscious. He suspects that his father is pretending not to know anything, and presses him to reveal the location of the ritual that can break the magic seal before the spell becomes irreversible. The father seems increasingly confused. Sachimikado arrives and explains that, although Talma's father was one of the suspects, he was unaware of what he was doing. The memories he collected from various countries were, in fact, essential components for the ritual. When the family left the house, the ritual was activated. The only solution now would be to destroy the caster, who could be Talma's own father, or else use magic to break the seal. Talma tries to defend his father, but Sachimikado knocks him out. After that, Talma's father decides to destroy the magic seal with his own magic, even though he knows that doing so is extremely dangerous, as a spare using magic could cause his own death. He takes 5 vials from his pocket and throws them into the 4 corners of the room. The floor lights up and Sachimikado begins to chant the incantations to stop the false angelic spell. As he speaks, he begins to bleed, but continues until he completes the spell, firing a strong plasma beam at Misha, who is destroyed. Daylight suddenly returns and Kanzaki is saved. Talma regains consciousness and checks on his father, who miraculously survived. However, Sachimikado's condition is more critical. In the next scene, Talma wakes up in a hospital bed and finds Sachimikado alive and well. Sachimikado reveals that he used his self-revival powers to return to life. A few moments later, Talma's parents appear and inform him that their house was destroyed by the explosion. They will have to live in the old rented mansion for the time being. Talma looks at his mother and recognizes that she is really his mother, and not the 15-year-old girl from before. Index arrives shortly after and complains about the things Talma did to her when he was in his other form. In revenge, she jumps on him and bites him. A few nights after being discharged, Talma wakes up in his dorm with a bleeding nose. He tries to get some paper from Index's bed without waking her. However, Index is quick-witted and misinterprets the situation, thinking that Talma has bad intentions. Talma tries to explain himself, but Index bites his head off. He checks the time and realizes that summer vacation has come to an end. The next day, Micah and the others return to school. Micah serves as Misaka's helper for a while, but Misaka soon gets bored and decides to leave. Upon leaving the maid school, she runs into her stalker, Anabara. Anabara approaches her and asks her out, but Misaka, uncomfortable, tries to politely decline. Anabara doesn't understand the rejection and continues to insist on following her everywhere. To get rid of him, Misaka grabs Talma and asks him to pretend to be her boyfriend. Everyone around sees the two holding hands and misinterprets the situation. Misaka takes Talma to a nearby restaurant and explains the situation involving her stalker. Anabara is the son of the superintendent, which makes it difficult to reject him directly. Misaka asks Talma to pretend to be her boyfriend so that Anabara will stop insisting. Talma teases Misaka and tells her that she should wipe the mustard off her nose before giving him an answer. Misaka, embarrassed, wipes her nose and hands Talma the hot dog. Talma then asks how they could make their relationship seem more real. Misaka suggests some ideas, and he listens attentively. Afterwards, the two sit down to do their homework together. Once they are done, she gets up and goes to get something for them both to drink. As Talma watches the movement ahead, he sees Anabara playing with a boy and his dog. Anabara notices Talma and approaches to talk. During the conversation, Talma discovers that Anabara is actually a good person, just very obsessed with someone. Misaka sees the two talking and asks to speak with Talma in private. Talma advises Misaka to consider giving Anabara a chance to see what happens. Misaka thinks about it, thanks him for his help and heads to another store, where he enters the crowd to buy drinks. Anabara stays by Talma's side, talking more about the situation. Suddenly, Talma notices a figure running through the crowd, someone identical to Anabara, apparently trying to reach Misaka to warn her of some impending danger. Confused, Talma turns to the Anabara who is next to him and asks if he has a brother, but the answer never comes. The Anabara at his side continues to act naturally, maintaining his composure until it is too late. With a quick and precise movement, he slaps Talma on the back, forcing a sudden fight to begin. Instinctively, Talma flees through the alleys of the city, trying to buy time. As he runs, he calls Index for answers. On the other end of the line, she quickly identifies the enemy's weapon, a knife made of black obsidian, encased in magic. The revelation only increases the urgency of the situation. Talma continues running until he is cornered in an abandoned construction site, surrounded by heavy machinery and menacing shadows. Talma charges at the monster and hits the knife with his right hand, destroying the weapon and nullifying the enemy's powers. A beam falls on them, but Talma manages to dodge it in time. He asks the monster a few questions before continuing the fight, and iron beams continue to fall, making the fight more difficult. At one point, a beam of energy falls directly on the monster, but instead of being crushed, it is divided and contained by Misaka's electricity. Misaka hesitates, unsure whether to give the real Onibara a chance or to end the threat once and for all. The story between Onibara and Misaka does not receive much time in the spotlight, with the focus shifting more to Accelerator's life after his defeat by Talma. One night, Accelerator goes to a nearby convenience store to buy some groceries. After shopping, he walks through the streets of Academy City and ends up encountering a group of delinquents who try to attack him. These attackers mistakenly believe that Accelerator has weakened after losing to Talma. He sighs and easily defeats them all before continuing on his way back home. This time, he walks more calmly and focused through the streets. Along the way, he notices a small person, covered in a cloak, following his footsteps. He allows this person to speak and then discovers that it is a clone of Misaka. This clone speaks at a fast pace, which makes him suspicious of her true intentions, so he removes the clone's cloak to confirm her identity and ends up exposing her naked body. Misaka curls up on the ground, embarrassed and cold. He returns the cloak to her and heads to the building where he lives, accompanied by the clone called 200,001, who continues to follow him and interfere with his routine. Tired of the clone's constant presence, he questions her motives. The clone reveals that she suspects that Accelerator knows more about the scientists involved in the research that was shut down. Despite this revelation, he remains calm and arrives at his apartment floor. Upon entering the room, he finds everything in disarray. Misaka suggests calling the authorities to investigate, but he chooses to ignore it and just lies down on the couch to sleep. He advises Misaka to do the same, as the next day could be difficult. The next morning, Accelerator wakes up to find Misaka's clone, identified as 200,001, talking nonsense. He gets ready for the day and heads to a nearby diner for breakfast. As Misaka chooses what to eat, Accelerator notices the scientist Amio getting into his supercar. The sight awakens his anger, and he considers confronting him. However, he hesitates for too long, and Amio notices his presence, quickly leaving. When the food arrives, he patiently allows Misaka's talkative clone to eat first. During the conversation, he questions why she talks so much and wonders what's in her brain. Misaka assures him that, even if she were to die, hundreds of other equally annoying clones would replace her because of what she carries inside her brain. Trying to maintain his menacing appearance, he threatens to eliminate them one by one. However, Misaka realizes that he is only pretending and reveals that she knows he never really liked the experiments. She then shares personal information about his history that he has never told anyone. Surprised, he looks at her with contempt and decides to leave. Misaka's clone collapses from exhaustion and lack of nutrients, a result of the time she spent in the incubation tank. He takes her to his home, showing care and compassion. Afterwards, Accelerator visits Yoshikawa, an older scientist, to borrow a manual for adjusting the Misaka clones. During the conversation, Yoshikawa informs Accelerator of an anomaly in the clone creation system. She reveals that Misaka is the last survivor of a specific batch and was created to lead the clone army. However, 7 days earlier, someone infected the clone's personality file with malicious code. The virus is scheduled to activate at midnight that same night. If successfully activated, all the clones will collapse. Accelerator asks Yoshikawa who was responsible for creating the virus, and she reveals that it was Amio who wrote the code. Driven by his personal grudge, Accelerator feels compelled to protect the Misakas and eliminate the virus. Yoshikawa gives him a file that can be used to locate Amio. As he walks, Accelerator reflects on his past and the fact that he was born with level 5 powers, which made him considered a threat to national security. He remembers how he was chased for years by the army and navy, who were never able to capture him. Deciding to save Misaka, he returns to the restaurant where he had left the clone and learns from the waitress that a man in a white coat took her away. He immediately contacts Yoshikawa and informs him of what happened. Together, they track Amio and manage to locate his position in a secluded area in the suburbs of the city. He smiles and quickly leaves for the location. location. In the next scene, Oma appears anxiously, waiting for the virus to activate. He connects his workstation to Misaka's brain and monitors her vital signs while waiting for the code to take effect. Suddenly, he notices Accelerator approaching through the side mirror of the car. Amo tries to escape, puts the car in reverse and speeds towards Accelerator, but Accelerator uses his force field to stop the car and trap Amo. With the scientist unconscious, Accelerator turns to Misaka's clone, who is unconscious. He finds electrodes connected to her head and contacts Yoshikawa, seeking information on how to stop the virus from activating. Yoshikawa explains that a special incubation tank will be needed, as well as a specific medicine to isolate and neutralize the virus code. Chadit says Yoshikawa assures him that he is already on his way to help. However, Misaka's clone begins to speak rapidly, which causes the heart monitor to overload. Yoshikawa realizes that the virus is trying to activate on its own, and that time is running out. She instructs Accelerator to eliminate the clone to save the others. Determined to save Misaka's sister without killing her, he decides to risk everything with a bold plan. He chooses to replace a will machine with himself and enter the clone's mind to manipulate her personality file and restore her to a previous state. Yoshikawa tries to convince him to give up the dangerous plan, but he ignores the warning and destroys objects around him while preparing for the ritual. He then accesses Misaka's mind and begins rewriting the code in an attempt to reboot her. Before Accelerator can finish the process, Ami wakes up and points a gun at him. Just before the reprogramming is complete, Ami shoots Accelerator in the head. Accelerator loses consciousness, but the virus code is erased and the system successfully reboots. After some time, he comes to, with blood running down his forehead, having managed to harden his skull in time to prevent the bullet from penetrating deeply. Even though he is wounded, he gets up and walks towards Ami, intending to finish him off, but collapses on the way. Ami starts laughing uncontrollably and prepares to shoot him again, who remains unconscious. However, Yoshikawa arrives in time and knocks Ami down. He falls to the ground and exchanges one last look with Yoshikawa before losing consciousness. Yoshikawa apologizes for being naive and says a few words of encouragement before kneeling down to finish what she started. Ami also raises the gun and utters her final words, and then they both pull the trigger at the same time. After surgery, Yoshikawa wakes up to find her doctor by her side. She learns that she survived thanks to his efforts. The doctor explains that it was Accelerator who kept her heart beating until they arrived at the hospital. Yoshikawa thanks him and asks about Misaka, learning that the girl is safe and that she is at Accelerator's house. Relieved to hear that the superiors have finally ended the research project, Yoshikawa thanks the doctor once again and finally allows her body to rest. She reflects on Accelerator's heroic actions and smiles as she remembers his courage. A few days have passed since the start of Tauma's new school semester. During breakfast, he talks to Index, his roommate, and promises to go out with her later. On the way to school, Tauma runs into the real Misaka, who seems to be in a hurry. He stops her and asks why she is in such a hurry. Misaka teases Tauma, remembering the times when the two pretended to be a couple to fool the class. Tauma interrupts her mid-talk and runs to school. In the parking lot, he encounters Professor Como, who is carrying a pile of papers. She explains that she has been tasked with writing a technical document for a research institute and comments on power levels and involuntary actions. Meanwhile, Tsuchimikado is magically transported to meet Alistair in a special room. Alistair informs him of an intruder named Shelley from the English Purist Church and assigns Tauma to deal with her. Tauma finds Tsuchimikado's absence strange and asks an uninformed friend about her whereabouts. Shortly after, Como arrives in the classroom and introduces Index as the new transfer student. However, everyone realizes their mistake when the real new student, Himegami, enters. Tauma and Como quickly correct the confusion and ask Index to wait outside. Index walks away and soon feels hungry. When she tries to use a vending machine near the school, she gets confused. A student named Hyuka helps her, and Index thanks her by inviting her to have lunch together at the cafeteria. Hyuka reveals that she is also a transfer student. After class, Tauma goes to the bathroom, but hears voices coming from a nearby room. He suddenly enters and finds Index and Hyuka changing clothes, and is immediately punched in the face. He later calms down and asks Index about Hyuka, but she has already disappeared. During recess, Index finds Hyuka hiding behind a tree in the schoolyard. The two talk about Tauma's feelings, and Index worries that he hates her. Hyuka tries to calm her down and assures her that Tauma still cares about her. Tauma arrives shortly after and asks the two out. However, when he realizes he has no money, he goes to the ATM to withdraw some money. There, Himegami appears and confronts him for having left her out. Tauma invites her to have lunch with the group, group. An embarrassed Himegami asks about Hyuka and reveals that they went to high school together, but no one at school remembered or could recognize her. After investigating on her own, Himegami discovers that Hyuka uses the code name Counterstop and is connected to the Five Elements Institution, a secret organization that influences Academy City. Before leaving, Himegami warns Tauma to be careful around Hyuka. Tauma takes everyone to a restaurant and, despite being shy, Hyuka ends up joining them. Back at school, Komo talks to her classmate Yamakawa about the connection between Tauma and the mysterious new student. During the conversation, Yamakawa receives a work call and leaves. Afterwards, Himegami gives Komo a library book and asks her to investigate Hyuka. In another part of the city, Shirai Kuroko faces an imposter and manages to capture her. The imposter summons a golem and traps Kuroko, but Misaka arrives in time, destroys the monster, and saves her friend. Together, they discover that the imposter has fled to another area and summoned an even stronger golem in search of something. After school, Tauma, Index, and Hyuka head to an underground mall. While the girls are shopping, Tauma receives a strange call from someone asking for help. The call ends abruptly, but he doesn't pay much attention to it since he's in a crowded place. Soon after, he finds the girls in the swimsuit section, where they decide to try on some models. While searching for them in the mall, Tauma accidentally walks into the dressing room and sees them partially naked, and is promptly beaten up by both of them. Later, they take pictures together in a booth and start to walk home. As they walk down the mall hallway, Misaka appears and tries to telepathically communicate with Tauma and the others. When this fails, she loudly warns that there is a terrorist in the area about to attack. The mall is evacuated, but one of the enemy golem's eyes detects Tauma and his group. The imposter woman, Shelly, closes the mall and cuts the power. Tauma orders Index and Hyuka to leave the premises immediately, but Index insists on staying to fight. After some discussion, Misaka and Kuroko join them. Misaka and Index exchange taunts, while Tauma tries not to get involved. Eventually, Tauma asks Kuroko about the situation, and she explains that she still needs to evacuate the remaining civilians. Tauma instructs Kuroko to take Index and Hyuka to a safe location, deciding to face the enemy alongside Misaka. Following the sound of destruction, Tauma finds security agents shooting at a golem controlled by Shelly and joins the battle. Shelly recognizes Tauma as the imaginary destroyer and considers killing him a great victory. She orders the golem to stop attacking and reveals that she is part of the English Purist Church, which surprises Tauma, since Index is also connected to that church. Despite the connection between them, Shelly continues to attack. Tauma manages to block all of the golem's attacks, and when he looks to the side, sees Hyuka watching everything. He tries to protect her, but the golem hits his face, crushing part of it. Hyuka wakes up and notices the damage to her face, as well as the presence of a strange light under her skin. Disoriented, she panics and runs away, being pursued by Shelly and her golem. Meanwhile, Kuroko finds other people trapped underground trying to escape. Tauma receives a call from Komo, who reveals Hyuka's true identity. Hyuka is a unique being, formed by the combination of bioelectricity from the city's spheres, carbon dioxide and oxygen. She lived as a type of ghost, invisible to the naked eye, but fortunately she did not show any hostile intentions. Hyuka is seen in an underground sewer system, where she tries to regenerate her injured face. Shelly and her golem find her and prepare to destroy her, stating that she is an anomaly and must be eliminated. Shelly reprimands the golem for its aggression. Hyuka sheds a tear and remembers the time she spent with Index. As the golem advances to attack her, Tauma arrives in time to stop the attack. After saving her, Tauma confronts Hyuka and insists that she stop acting strangely and fight alongside him. However, Shelly summons an even more powerful golem and orders it to attack Tauma and Hyuka, just when Shelly believes she has cornered her targets. Security agents appear and force her to flee. Tauma's determination is renewed, and he prepares for a new fight. Shelly controls her golem and summons the powers of the four archangels to face the imagined destroyer she sees in Tauma. Tauma takes cover behind riot shields and speaks to one of the officers, asking them to leave a path open at the right time. Hyuka tries to convince him not to risk his life, but he claims that he has no other choice but to face the monster. Bravely, he steps forward and positions himself in front of the golem. Shelly realizes the threat and orders the golem, named Ellis, to attack Tauma. However, Tauma skillfully dodges the blows and reaches Shelly, delivering a powerful punch that knocks her to the ground. He prepares to deliver a final blow to the golem with his right hand, but Shelly regains her senses and casts a spell that opens a hole in the ground. fleeing the fight. Lying on the sand, Shelly reveals that she wants to start a war and needs an excuse to do so, which is why she attacked Talma and Hyuka. However, something doesn't make sense to Talma. If Hyuka was the main target, why didn't Shelly take her right away? Suddenly, Talma understands. Shelly is probably after Index, not Hyuka. Meanwhile, Index and Misaka wait at a subway station, awaiting Talma and Hyuka's return. Index shows concern for Hyuka and comments on the spells she saw Shelly cast. Misaka asks why she isn't worried about Talma, and Index replies that she knows he always comes back, no matter what. Sphinx, Index's cat, escapes from her clothes and runs away. Misaka asks Index to go after the cat while she waits. Talma argues with the agents, demanding that they remove the seals blocking the passage. They explain that they do not have the authority to lift the seals. Talma considers jumping into the hole to face Shelly directly, but Hyuka stops him. She remembers the brief moments she spent with Index and Talma, cherishing every moment. In order to protect Talma, Hyuka decides to sacrifice herself and face Shelly alone. She runs along the subway tracks and sets off in search of Shelly and the monster. Hyuka remembers her previous existence as an entity suspended between dimensions, capable of perceiving all vectors around her, including humans, while being invisible to everyone. One day, bored, she saw Index having trouble with a vending machine and, moved, decided to help her. Thus, Hyuka materialized and transformed into a human. Index finds Sphinx at a construction site and retrieves him. Suddenly, Shelly's golem emerges from a manhole and confronts Index. Using her knowledge of Shelly's spells, Index manipulates the golem into sabotaging itself. The strategy works at first, but the golem regains control and throws Index to the ground, ready to attack. Following Hyuka along the tracks, Talma encounters Shelly, who reveals that her golem is currently dealing with Hyuka. Shelly tells us that in the past, Academy City officials tried to combine the powers of Espers and mages to create a chimera with both abilities. One of the test subjects was Shelly's friend Ellis. The experiment failed and Ellis was brutally killed by the scientists. Since then, Shelly has wanted revenge on the city. Now that she has found Talma, the strongest of the Espers, she believes she can achieve her goal and leave the city defenseless. Shelly activates her magic seals and begins to collapse the tunnel. Talma reacts quickly, runs towards Shelly and punches her with his right hand. The blow distorts Shelly's vision and breaks the spell. She recovers and tries to move away to regroup, but Talma stops her. He talks to her sincerely, reminding her that she is not the only one who has faced tragedy. Talma shares his own losses and the fact that he has been called unlucky by the entire city, vowing not to let Shelly get what she wants. Excited, Shelly launches another magical attack, but Talma anticipates the move and knocks her down with a punch. On the surface, Index is cornered by the golem. Just as he is about to attack her, Hyuka appears and hits him, temporarily incapacitating him. The golem reacts by creating a vortex in its chest that begins to suck in everything around it. Even so, Hyuka and Index survive the attack. The golem prepares to strike again, but Hyuka musters all his strength to hold it back. Just as the golem is about to attack again, Talma arrives and uses his right hand to block the attack. Misaka and Kuroko appear shortly after the golem is defeated. Misaka teases Talma as usual, and Kuroko shows his affection for Misaka. In the next scene, Talma takes Hyuka to the top of a crane. When they get there, Hyuka talks about her dear friend and the attack she suffered. Overcome with emotion, she begins to cry, and Talma comforts her, saying that her ability to feel and cry proves that she is truly human. At that moment, Index joins them at the top of the crane and rushes to hug Hyuka. Meanwhile, Tsuchimikado meets with Illister to discuss a flaw in his previous plan. During the conversation, Tsuchimikado realizes that Illister is an angel who wants to create paradise on Earth. He decides to withdraw his support, but warns Illister about Talma's unpredictable behavior. Illister accepts the warning and remains alone. Later, Talma and the girls have fun with a doctor at the hospital. After that, Index and Hyuka spend some time alone. Index notices that Hyuka is acting up and asks why. Hyuka explains that this is a side effect of staying in that dimension for too long. She says it's time to return to her world, says goodbye, and disappears into her alternate reality. Life returns to normal after the conflicts are resolved. Tsuchimikado leaves school. Talma resumes his role as a regular student. Misaka continues to be the target of Kuroko's exaggerated affection, and everything returns to a peaceful routine. The story gives a preview of the next important character, Archbishop Laura Stewart, who eats lunch under the watchful eye of her bodyguard. Index goes back to looking for Talma at school and scolds him for forgetting to put food in the fridge, biting his head once more. And so we end the first part of this story. Leave a like if you liked it and subscribe to the channel for more.